Hyundai just announced a massive $21 billion investment in U.S. manufacturing, promising 100,000 new jobs. But is this a true win for American workers or just a way to dodge tariffs? With trade policy shifting fast, automakers are scrambling to set up shop in the U.S. Is this the beginning of a manufacturing revival or just another corporate maneuver? Stick around because in the end, we'll break down who really benefits from these moves.
Gary, moving to thing number 3. Before we do that, though, you're watching the non-transitory inflation issue of the 5 things from Deep Knowledge Investing. We keep you in tune with everything you need to know in the market and what's happening in the macro, micro, individual equities, the whole 9 yards. If you'd like to sign up for our mailing list, head to our website, deepknowledgeinvesting.com. All it will take is first name and an email address, and you'll be notified of all future posting content material being distributed through the website. And then we also have our premium version of the subscription, $100 a month, and that'll get you access to all current DKI recommendations, Gary's buys, his sells, even more importantly, and a lot of premium access to guest speakers, webinars, and just a slew of additional information that is not gated. So would love if you would consider subscribing via the website. Gary, moving to thing number 3, we're talking an OEM, Hyundai. They announced that they're going to have more manufacturing in the United States, up to 100,000 new jobs in the next 3 years. We've been seeing a lot of these announcements about foreign investment coming into the United States. Thing number 3, Gary, Hyundai rides that wave of foreign investment into the United States.
Well, Rob, you're right. So it's $21 billion they're committing to. And that is going to include a new $5.8 billion Louisiana steel plant. And so, a big part of this has to do with U.S. trade policy between the tariffs on imported automobiles and also tariffs on imported steel. Foreign companies are saying, you know what? We're going to manufacture in the U.S. And in the case of Hyundai, they're going to manufacture steel and automobiles here. So, that's your trade policy. Now, the anti-tariff crowd, the free trade crowd, they're understandably going to say, hey, wait a minute, isn't this going to end up with more expensive cars? And that could happen. And, President Trump actually addressed that, I think, within the last 24 hours. People said, hey, wait a minute, we're going to end up with higher priced cars. And he said, that's fine, whatever we need to do to bring manufacturing here. And so, there's a big debate going on that, but steel is a huge issue. You've got 25% tariffs on imported cars. And so, there is a sense of urgency for automakers to produce more here in the United States. At this point, we've seen announcements from Taiwan Semiconductor, the world's best semiconductor manufacturing company, for about $165 billion of investment. Apple, $500 billion. SoftBank, about $100 billion. Stargate, I don't know if they have the funding or not, but that's $500 billion. Saudi Arabia, $600 billion. Now, $21 billion from Hyundai. People can keep saying, oh, this doesn't count. This won't work. This isn't going to happen. Look, some of this stuff is going to take years, but at some point, all that's trillions of dollars of investing, that leads to more manufacturing jobs. And that's actually a national security issue here.
Gary, you mentioned it, though. It is a complicated as well as controversial topic, right, in terms of these investments, what's included in them. I mean, what are people who may be against this saying? Do they have any good points? What do we need to consider from the other side of the argument?
So, Rob, I actually think both sides have good points. My issue is that there are very few people talking about this issue as in total. So right now, the pro-tariff crowd only wants to talk about potential new jobs. Now, is that a good point? Yeah, that is a great point. And what the U.S. has been doing for about 40 or 50 years is outsourcing all of our manufacturing jobs. And basically what we've been doing over half a century is slowly selling off our industrial base and getting rid of those high quality, high paying jobs for people who, didn't spend 6 figures to go to college. And there's only so long you can do that. There's only so long you can sell off the assets that prior generations built before you run out of things. We can't keep doing this. And the pro tariff crowd is saying, wait a minute, we have entire segments of the Midwest that are just dying from opioid abuse and don't have the opportunity for jobs we need to onshore. They're also correctly saying, wait, this is a national security issue. If you can't build if you can't build things, if you can't build cars, if you can't make semiconductors, you've got a huge problem. And I've talked a lot about the issues of not being able to manufacture our own pharmaceuticals. So I think they've got some great points. Now, let's talk about the great points on the other side, right? The anti-tariff crowd wants to talk about potential higher costs. And that's true as well, right? Tariffs are a tax. And, when President Trump says, go ahead, so make, automotive prices higher, that is going to cost people more. Now, is this working or not? I think the best explanation I saw of this is low tariffs and free trade, particularly where tariffs are low or non-existent in the US and our trading partners may have high tariffs. What that means is that we outsource jobs. And for wealthy people, we get low priced goods and low cost labor. And that's pretty good. But for the lower and middle classes, for blue collar workers, they get despair and no jobs. And so these policies, when they say that we're going to have more inflation and higher costs, that is a valid point. But when you look at these policies in total, they've been really good for wealthy people, really bad for the lower and middle class. And they don't want to acknowledge that. So, listen, I'm in favor of free trade, but I also see the personal downside of national security issues of outsourcing more and more manufacturing. Personally, I would rather see the country trying to encourage more manufacturing jobs than increasing social programs that encourage people to not work. So I think there are some advantages to what the Trump administration is trying to do. I think there are valid points on both sides. At a minimum, what I would like to see, if I could just get one change made, is I would like to see the people who are talking about this stuff in public do what we just did, which is acknowledge the good points of the other side, acknowledge that this is a complicated issue, and try to give people a full picture of this complicated issue rather than just talking points for their own side. And everybody claims that, they're the beneficiary, they're the protector of the lower classes of poor people, and the people on the other side are just evil people who want more money for rich people. Notice both sides are claiming that. Well, everybody can't both sides can't be right on that. And the only way we get through this is, I think, a more honest, more complete conversation where we acknowledge the good points of the other side. In this segment, what we're trying to do is do our part to explain to people the good and bad points of both sides of this argument. We're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Gary. And I think one we take seriously is, hey, we want to have that discourse, that understanding. If you think we're wrong, why or because, right? Have that conversation and seeing things from both sides. So we encourage anybody, leave a comment, question that you might have for Gary as well. Be sure to follow up with those, and any good questions might even make their way on the show as we're having more conversations, as I'm sure this will not be the last time we're talking about tariffs over the next 4 years.
Yeah, it's going to come up more often. And, I want to highlight what Rob just said, which is, you may have strong feelings about this or strong opinions on it. Great. Just use the word because and explain, right? You're wrong because, or I think this is the right way to view it because. The people who just write, you're an idiot, I ignore them. They take up no time. The people who engage and explain their point of view, we respond to that. And so happy to have the engagement. Just explain why you think what you think.